Okay, let's continue our discussion of causes of slope failure. Now we're going to look at shallow slides and debris flows. So this first case in this section is one I personally remember quite vividly. In 1983, I was a young college student and in the process of getting engaged and married, and we had a really wet year. They had an incredible amount of snowfall. The soil got really saturated, and then it thawed out very quickly, and so there were a lot of landslides. This was probably the biggest here in Utah. This is up Spanish Fork Canyon, and this a massive part of soil just slid down and ended up filling up the bottom of the canyon. Well, the Spanish Fork River comes through here, but there's also a railway that came through here that was used by the coal mines up by Price to ship coal, and it blocked that off. But once this slide came down and hit the bottom, all the water from the Spanish Fork River filled up behind it, and there was a community back here called Thistle, a small community, not too many homes, but that water rising, they weren't covered by the slide, but the water rising basically buried all of their homes. And they were, if you drive up there now, the water's gone, but you can still see some of the foundations and some of the walls of those old homes up there. And then it became a real concern, because once this filled in, there was a worry that this water would overtop and erode this dam away and basically flood the community of Spanish Fork down there. And so they rapidly put in some siphons and materials to get the water off, and were able to keep the water going in a manner that didn't cause a massive failure. And then they ended up tunneling through the rock up here and building a new a railway, because they couldn't use the bottom anymore. This water is all still, this slide is all still here in the bottom of the canyon. They didn't move it out, and it's grown over with vegetation, but this was a big deal, and it got a lot of national attention as well. This is just a small slide in 2005 here in Utah that I found interesting, up near Lone Peak, Utah. And this slide came down, a rapid slide again during a wet condition, and plowed into the back of this home, did some serious damage. I don't think anyone was hurt. This is a slide that occurred in South America. This one, unfortunately, took quite a few lives. They had this very rapid debris flow after an intense rain event, and this soil came down extremely rapidly, similar to the one we saw a little earlier, and covered this area and caused a lot of damage. Another really common, or I shouldn't say common, but another condition that leads to rapid shallow failures is in soils which are referred to as quick clays. So clays, if you study soil mechanics, they have these thin, very thin particles these are like plates. We're looking at a cross section through it, and the ends of these plates are positively, negatively charged, and so if they deposit in a marine environment, they tend to kind of flocculate in this big open structure that's kind of like a house of cards. Because in that marine structure, with all the ions in the seawater, it makes the clay particles flocculate and connect to each other in this fashion. So if you have a bunch of clay that's maybe you have a river that has clay particles in it, and it goes out to sea and it settles down to the bottom and it flocculates, and then over time, if the land rises or the sea level falls, then these soils that were once in that marine environment that where they have these bonds that make these particles stick to one another. With the fresh water, those bonds become weak, and so you get this loose structure that's not stable, and any sort of shaking causes it to collapse, as shown on the right. And if it's saturated, it can basically liquefy. And so there are a number of these clays in Canada. They're called Leda clays, and there's you can look up lots of slides, quick clay slides in Canada, but they're really common in Norway. And there was a very famous slide in Norway in 1978. There was a farmer out digging some soil. He wanted to do an extension to his barn, and the soil started sloughing off and liquefying, and pretty soon it got bigger and bigger, and pretty soon this whole region liquefied, and you can see a home here. They're actually old 8mm film of this. This was before video cameras became a thing, but there was some video of this or some film of this that you can look up. You can see homes basically floating down. And there was a lake next to this, or I can't remember if it was a lake, or actually it might be an inlet for the sea. And this soil came down so rapidly it caused a wave to go across this body of water and then flood a community on the other side, kind of like a tsunami. Once this stuff starts to fail, it goes crazy, and it just progressed upstream farther and farther. And so here's another aerial photo of where that occurred. And these are still ongoing. This is one in 2010 that same kind of thing, a quick clay slide in Norway.